Gathered friends, listen briefly to our legend of the Bionicle. Bionicle was a toy line of action figures released by the LEGO Group throughout the 2000s. Accompanying it was an epic tale of biomechanical heroes, the Toa, traversing the universe, using their elemental powers to save its people, the Matoran, from the evil forces of the Makuta. Written primarily by Greg Vahkiti with some contributions by others, and told across numerous novellas, comics, movies, and online story serials, what started as mere escapades on a tropical island soon turned into a grand exploration of cities and continents and civilizations suspended inside the Earth-sized, star-faring robot body of the Matoran's god, Matanui. During a climactic battle for power, Matanui was ousted from this body, banished by the Makuta to the remnants of a planet torn asunder. This, Matanui came to learn, was the birthplace of his forebears, the Great Beings, and it was his destiny to heal the shattered world and unite its people, though he still felt duty-bound to the biomechanical beings that had lived inside his body for those hundreds of millennia. By winning the allegiance of the planet's tribes and repairing the broken husk of a prototype for his old body, Matanui was able to stand once more on equal footing with his long shadow now commanded by the Makuta. The two titans clashed, and Matanui prevailed, sending Makuta and all his body's inhabitants crashing down to the planet's surface. Using the last of his power, Matanui fulfilled his mission, reforming the planet's Ferus Magna into one teeming with nature and life. As he faded into dormancy, the natives of this world, and those who had lived inside the giant robot, were faced with the duty of learning to live in unity, as one people, in their new shared home. It was time to forge their own destiny. And then Greg decided to keep going, writing more stories and introducing new plot threads, many of which weren't unresolved, as he's a busy guy and he wasn't really getting paid for any of this, as the Bionicle storyline had ended production. But before we see how the fans of Bionicle addressed this dilemma, I'd like to talk about this show, Gathered Friends, for any newcomers. Gathered Friends, hosted by myself, Chip Wiseman, was a way to get my good friend Levi here immersed in the story of Bionicle, as he was curious about it but had never read it before. He, I, and two members of the Beaverhouse YouTube channel, Liam and Josie, read through the compiled works of Bionicle, chapter by chapter, and discussed it in this podcast, kind of like a book club. This gained quite the unexpected following, and each episode we were joined by guests ranging from other fans of Bionicle, newcomers like Levi, to even the author, Greg Vahkiti himself. But we finished that. There was no more Bionicle to read, so what do we discuss now? Well, remember those unresolved plot threads I mentioned? A dedicated and talented group of Bionicle fans banded together, under the name Lightstone Studios, to make good on Bionicle's unfinished business. Initially formed to restore the lost Bionicle PC game from 2001, Lightstone branched out into authoring faithful continuations and conclusions of those unfinished stories from the end of the saga. Although a lot of the work, perhaps most of it, was finished by the Myths and Legacy team that was formed separately. With the aid of Greg Vahkiti, who provided insight into his original vision for the stories that he couldn't finish, Myths and Legacy published these works as the final chapter in Vision of the Great Beings. And that is what we have read in preparation for today. But it's a new start for this show, and some changes are needed. For goodness sake, we're on Sheridan Radio now. And so I think it's time for someone who's a bit more qualified to take the reins. So, with all due reverence, allow me to introduce this season's host, Max Dudek.